Two. Cantor Jake is two. Cantor Jake is leading it, two. Yeah, two.
That's what we should be on the.
Okay, I'm gonna use this.
They're missing out. I just got yellow with, you know, the line hairstyle. Please. No, that was not. I get just as this age. We don't. I'm sure.
Okay, that's great. Hello, everybody. Shabbat shalom. I have to say that I am just so thrilled to see all of you here today. It's just, this is our second Parsha Perspectives class. And I love to see all of you online, all of you in the room. Like, what a beautiful, I couldn't think of a better way to start the Shabbat time in our lives than to actually do so together in learning, diving into our Parsha and just being together. So it's what a joy. I'm so glad that we are on the move already and this is becoming part of your learning routine. So today we're going to dive into Parsha Pinchas. And Parsha Pinchas has many moments and experiences and episodes that are worthy of study. But I wanted us to focus specifically today on the daughters of Zelophehad, as I mentioned last week, because not just because of what they do and what their action leads to, but to actually, when the Torah mentions people by name, it's worthy of stopping, pausing, and giving them the kavod, the honor of exploring why. Why are they mentioned by name? That's one thing. What are they doing? What are they bringing about? What is it about them themselves, their neshama, their essence that we should pay attention to? And then, as a nice nechemta, as a nice wrap up at the end, it works perfectly because this week the Torah portion is living in real life. And what I mean by that is there were 6 women in Israel who were the impetus for an incredible verdict that was ruled on this week, just this week in the courts with the Supreme Court in Israel. Thank you, Rachel, so much. If you need a name tent, if you don't have one, Rachel has something. Thank you, perfect timing. So we'll go ahead and just put your name, and if anyone else needs one. So we're gonna actually look at the case in the Torah, and then we're going to explore the case that happened just this week. So amazing, right? Like it's Bashir, it's great, all good things. Okay, who's ready to study? Oh, no, no one said anything. Okay, who's ready to study? Thank you, thank you. Makes me happy. Okay, let me share my screen. As we do, we're gonna begin with the blessing for the study of Torah. Remember, it's about making it our business to study Torah. So, and I still don't know why I can't get this. Okay. Oh, I know what it is. Watch this. Okay, ready? Let's say our blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. In the English, blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who made us holy with your mitzvot and commanded us to study words of Torah. So you have, for the people in the room, you have all of these texts on your sheet. And for those of my friends online and virtually, the same texts are on the screen. What we're going to do, as we do when we study Torah, as I read the Torah pieces aloud, underline, highlight, circle, what words stand out for you, what concepts resonate for you, what are you thinking, what are you feeling, and what are you experiencing as you hear the words. So to set up the context as to where we are, these are the verses before the Parsha begins, but I think it's really important to understand where we are and what's happening. Moses is taking a census of all of the men who are among the people of Israel. They are counting, okay? They are counting how many are within each tribe to get to the full amount of how many are in the enrollment of Israelite men, okay? So I'm gonna read it. This is the enrollment of the Israelite men, 601,730. Adonai spoke to Moses saying, among these shall the land be apportioned as shares, according to the listed names. With larger groups, increase the share. With smaller groups, reduce the share. Each is to be assigned its share according to its enrollment. The land, moreover, is to be apportioned by lot, and the allotment shall be made according to the listings of their ancestral tribes. Each portion shall be assigned by lot, whether for larger or smaller groups. What's happening? What are they doing? Go ahead.
They're doing a census and then Moses is using that census to apportion land
Land where?
in Israel.
All right, okay, so the land, Haaretz, the promised land. Remember, the Israelites are still on the other side. They have not crossed over into the land yet. They're not far, they're preparing, they're getting ready. This is the group, the generation who will enter the land. So as they're part of all of their plans of moving into this space, they need to know where they're actually gonna live. What land will belong to which tribe? Where will all the tribes go? Once we enter into this space, we're no longer living like we're living in the desert, right? We're now gonna set up and dwell. We're no longer gonna be nomadic. We're no longer wandering. We are going to lay shed, to sit, to settle the land. And in so doing, everyone who's a part of this community needs to know where they're going, right? There's no Zillow. They're not looking up as to what's available. This is what's available according to the size of your tribe. So it's important to know how much land does each tribe need, right? So that's what's happening. That's where we are. That's what's setting up this next moment, okay? So the questions we have, yeah.
I just wanted to, do they know at this point the conditions of the land, like this portion of land has water on it and that one is very stony and stuff like that?
Oh, it's so interesting. So what do we know about how what they know about the land is from the 12 spies, right? The 12 men that went out to see the land, right? That went sort of okay, right? Right? They did bring back what we now know of as the 7 species. They had the pomegranates, they had the wheat, they had the barley, they had the grapes, like, so we know that it is bountiful. They do know, what else do they know about the land as a result of the tribes coming back? There are other people there, right? There are other peoples, and for their response was, oh my gosh, they're giants, we are like grasshoppers, right? That was a scary thing that they learned. But then Joshua and Caleb said, God is with us. Like, if everything, haven't we learned enough of this journey to know that God is with us, right? Which then is gonna lead to another beautiful moment a little bit later on that we're not addressing, but when Moses basically ordains Joshua as the leader that will take them into the land. Which is what our tradition says, because Joshua was one of the ones that spoke up and said, no, 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 God is with us. That was one of the reasons why Joshua was then labeled to be the next leader of the people of Israel. So great question. Do they know? Ish, but not really. They just know right now the biggest focus is, if I move this group to this part of the land, is there enough room for them? They're a larger tribe, they're a smaller tribe, like trying to make sure everyone's where they are. So that's setting the scene, okay? So let's see what happens next. This begins our Parsha. This is the portion we're studying. The daughters of Zelophehad, of the Manasseh family, son of Hefer, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Menashe, son of Joseph, came forward. The names of the daughters were Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah. What do you notice? What stands out? What strikes you?
They sound like men.
They went,
They sound like male names.
they sound, okay, they sound like male names, okay, but, okay. Okay.
That's something the family of Joseph.
Okay. All right, yeah, there are definitely Noahs that are, yeah, give you both, yeah.
They're Joseph's.
Okay, so they come from the descendants of
And
Joseph.
their naming though, it's not just their daughters, it shows you there's something important about it because their name.
Okay, beautiful. So it starts, I want us to talk about how it starts out, the verse. They start out as a group. The daughters of Zelophehad. Okay? Comma. Of. Here's who they're from. This is their ancestry, right? This is where they come from. Here's where they're from. Here's the tribe that they're from. Then it says what? Here's who they are. This is their lineage. This is their status. Then it says what? The daughters came forward. The daughters of Zelophehad came forward. There's an action. Then the Torah names them. The names of the daughters were, and not just one of them or the oldest or whatever, each single woman is named as an individual. Each of these individuals is part of this daughter grouping, which has a lineage. Okay, so let's see what Rashi says about that. Okay, so why do they list it? Did you want to say something?
And Rashi only had daughters, so it's very interesting.
Yeah,
That
but Rashi picks up on it.
That's the,
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Good, beautiful. Okay, so Rashi comments on this. What does Rashi say? Rashi wants to understand one thing first. Rashi's commenting on, why does it say Ben Yosef, Lemishpachat Menashe Ben Yosef? Why does it say that the daughters of Zelophehad are from these families, from this family? Why does it say this? Has it not already been said, Ben Menashe? Isn't it enough to say he's part of Menashe?
Because they're gonna give them land too.
Well, let's see, we don't know, let's see what he says. And consequently, we know that they belong to the family of Menashe, the son of Joseph. But it is to suggest the following idea. Here's what Rashi suggests. The reason why they say all this, just as Joseph held the promised land dear, as it said in Grace Sheet 50, and you shall bring up my bones. Remember, Joseph says, when I die, if I'm not, I'm dying here in Egypt, make sure that when you go into the Holy Land, into the promised land, you dig up my bones and take them with you, so I can be buried there. So too his daughters held the land dear, as it is said, give us an inheritance, which we'll see in a second when they come forward. And further, to teach you that they were all righteous, that every single one of them is righteous, and therefore everyone here mentioned in the pedigree, for in every case where a person's doing and his ancestors' doings are nowhere plainly described, and scripture somewhere enters into the details of the pedigree with respect to one of them, tracing the genealogy back to someone worthy of praise, it is evident that the person in question is himself a righteous man and son of a righteous father. What is Rashi saying? It's not just that we are naming the genealogy back to Joseph, that Joseph was dear to the land, so it shows that the daughters are also dear to the land, that they want to have a place in this land. But what is the reason for listing the pedigree? For listing the genealogy here? Tara?
When I did notes on the Parsha, I wrote, one of the themes that keeps popping up for me is legacy.
Beautiful. Legacy. And for Rashi, what was important here is because Rashi wants to understand who are these women? Why are they mentioned individually by name? We need to understand who they are in order to then understand what comes next. They have a legacy, but not just any legacy, they have a legacy of righteousness. They come from good family, right? Where does that resonate with anyone? You shouldn't have. Okay, having a good reputation, right? That's important. Hey, I'm interested in setting up my daughter. I hear about this guy and I was just so curious. Does he come from a good family? Oh my goodness, his parents are amazing. They're so kind and they're so generous and they're so giving. And anytime someone new comes into the community, they welcome them with open arms. I can only imagine if this is where he comes from, that he is a good to neshama. He's a good soul, a mensch. This is one for your daughter. Oh, thank you so much. I feel so much better. Never heard that before. Never done that yourself? Never made that phone call? No?
And then someone tells them from another group.
Okay, Margaret. Right. Okay, so they're trying to set up here to understand from where these women come from. Okay? All right.
Can I just,
Of
in
course.
parentheses, it says to Palestine.
Mhm.
Would the Jews calling it Palestine then?
Well, yeah,
Or the
because
Jews?
yeah, because you know, that's where the name changes much later on as in terms of, but the land originally was not necessarily known as Israel from the earliest times, right? Like Palestine is the land is known from like the earliest days of when other forces or civilizations were in command and control of the land, right? And so remember Rashi is writing in like I think, wow. 12th century. Yeah, 12, 13, right? So that's how they understand the land, right? Okay. All right, let's see what Bamidbar Rabbah says. And what is Bamidbar Rabbah? What are the commentators focused on here? Yeah. The italics is what they pick up in the text of the Torah. So in Bamidbar Rabbah, they want to understand, well, what does it actually mean that the daughters of Zelophehad came forward? What does that mean? Came forward where? Right, was anyone else found that curious? Why is it important? They came forward, okay? But the sages want to understand what that means. So here's what they say. The daughters of Zelophehad came forward. This was greatness for them and greatness for their father. Greatness also for Machir as well as for Joseph, that such women came forth from them. They were wise and righteous women. What was their wisdom? They spoke at the appropriate time. For Moses was engaged upon the subject of inheritance. I put this commentary before we actually read the episode, because I think it's so interesting when we think about this next line of what they're about to do, that the rabbis and the commentary, what they're commenting on is, what does it mean that they came forward? Remember, this was not something that women did, right? They came forward. They're coming forward to do something, to speak about something. And what the rabbis are suggesting here is they come from good places. They have a righteous legacy and lineage. They are wise. They're coming forward because they're wise and they're righteous. And they're about to speak at the appropriate time. So let's see what they said, okay? Numbers 27, it continues. They, the women, stood before Moses, Eleazar, the priest, the chieftains, and the whole assembly at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they said, our father died in the wilderness, He was not one of the faction of Korah, which banded together against Adonai. Remember, we read that portion not too long ago. But for his own sin, and he has left no sons. What is their first issue that the women notice as they're listening to this apportioning out of the land?
Amen.
Okay, they're counting the men, right? Okay, and they're apportioning it out by the tribe and the tribal leaders who are the men. And what they're noticing is what? We have,
Sons.
there are no sons in our family. Our father has died. So now, that's the first issue. Their father is gone. There are no sons. And so as they're listening, they're realizing, wait a second,
They cut us out.
what's gonna happen to us? Okay, good, all right. Korach's faction that banded together against Adonai, but for his own sin, and he's left no sons. Let not our father's name be lost in his plan just because he had no son. Give us a holding among our father's kinsmen. I want us to pause for a second because we're reading this through our lens and we're reading it. But I want us to take pause and actually stop and imagine these women. Imagine them in the desert. Imagine them standing in front of 1,730 men. Hold on, imagine. They came forward, and what did they do? They came forward and stood right in front of Moses, Eleazar the priest, the chieftains, and the entire assembly. 5 of these women. And they come forward and they go right to the top. God, that's good, isn't it? That's like righteous chutzpah, okay? Right? They came forward, they go right before Moses in front of the entire assembly and they say, wait a minute. I'm meeting you right here at the entrance to the tent of meeting. I know what happens in that tent. I know who you communicate with, Moses. I'm coming right here to this place in this time because I hear what's happening here. Me and my sisters are realizing that because our father died, of his own sin, he was not part of the group of men that rose up against you, Moses. Let's be clear, right? They're very clear. Every word here is intentional. It is not extraneous, it's intentional. This is who our father was. He died in the wilderness. We have no brothers. Don't let our name, the daughters of Zelophehad and Zelophehad itself, be lost. Meaning, don't let us go into this land and not have a portion of our legacy, of our father's name. Grant us a holding among our father's kinsmen. Grant us a portion amongst our tribe that we have our own piece of land. Margaret?
Well, my assumption is, these are young girls. I mean, obviously they married these women when they were very young, so my assumption is that these are young girls. I mean, maybe not of marriageable age, I don't know. But
Okay, that's a very good point. Does everyone hear what Margaret brings up? It does not say in the text, the daughters of Zelophehad who are married to. Doesn't say that. Because that would mean if they were married, they'd be part of their husband's tribe and they'd have a portion. Whatever, because they would be going into their husband's portion, into their land with their husbands. They are not. Excellent observation, okay? Because number one, they don't have a portion, they are just amongst themselves. Very good. Spencer?
In a time that was, like, really all time, that was very much based on the male and what the male gets and women aren't entitled. They were smart enough to say, let our father's name not be lost.
Right.
Not so much what's gonna happen to us, but our father's honorability comes from Joseph. He wasn't one of the bad guys. Don't let his name be lost. He was a good guy.
Exactly, right? That's very, very important too, because the tradition is gonna focus on their intention, right? Very good. This is not just for them. It is for them. It's not just for them. Okay, very good. Don't let our name be erased. Don't let Zelophehad be erased. We wanna. What does Moses do here? Not just talks to God, but how is it written?
He brought their case, he argued for them.
Hold on. Doesn't say he argued for them.
That's what he
What does he say? What does it say? Be really intentional about the word.
Brought their case.
Moses brought their case before God. Yeah,
I kind of have to agree with what Spencer said. If he didn't think it was worthy, he wouldn't have brought the case, so he was definitely advocating for them.
okay. Great. What do we find interesting about this moment?
It's on you.
About Moses,
He's open-minded.
okay?
He didn't make a decision on his own.
Bingo. Fascinating. It's fascinating. Moses doesn't make a decision. Moses doesn't say, oh my gosh, you're right. What does Moses realize in the moment?
It's God's decision.
This is a decision worthy of God's judgment. Worthy of bringing before God. It's bigger than Moses. I think truly this moment is so profound for the leader to describe the leader and the leadership style of Moses. Now, there are many different interpretations. One, they could say Moses had not a clue of what to say, Moses just takes it to God. They could say, you know what, Moses needed to bring this before God, didn't have the answer. You could say all those things. But there's something beautiful in the text here that you could say Moses brought their case before God because Moses realized in the moment that this was that this deserved, if you want to talk about advocated for them in the most, in a really beautiful way. That this deserves the presence of God. This case, this argument that they present is worthy of the divine.
I think also it takes the onus off of him. This is about man, and I think the idea that he's consulting with the head guy, that the men are gonna start coming up to him because it's a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely, right? This is a big deal. This is a big deal. And let's see what we learn about. We're gonna come back to the Rashi. I wanna keep with the text for a second. Here's what God says. And God says to Moses, the plea of Zelophehad's daughters is just. You should give them a hereditary holding among their father's kinsmen. Transfer their father's share to them. What are your initial reactions?
So you check out.
Okay, wow, what else?
God didn't just think, okay, maybe we should do this, he thought it was just,
Mm,
it was fair to give the daughters when there was no son.
I love that. I love the language here. I love the language here. Doesn't say that they were right and wrong. Doesn't say, I'll think it over. Or, interesting, I'll come back to you. Right? The plea of the daughters of Zelophehad's daughters is just. Transfer their father's share to them. Further, speak to the Israelite people as follows. So it's not just enough to tell them that they're just. It could be the first step to just be like, great, let them have their father's holding. All is great, this will be for them, we'll make an exception. What does it say? If a householder dies without leaving a son, you shall transfer his property to his daughter. If he has no daughter, you shall assign his property to his brothers. If he has no brothers, you shall assign his property to his father's brothers. If his father had no brothers, you shall assign his property to his nearest relative in his own clan who shall inherit it. This shall be the law of procedure for the Israelites in accordance with Adonai's command to Moses. What do you think? Walk through the process.
I think he just lays it all out,
Lays it all out.
that's the way it is, and I bet till this day, in some ways, they just still follow that law.
Very good. Okay, Andrew.
Well, it starts out, the daughters are pleading and Moses, responds, that they go, if you have no daughter, you sign the property to brothers, but what if there's a sister? And what if they don't acknowledge any other women except the daughters.
Okay, right, okay, interesting, very interesting. Okay, what else?
I think it's interesting that God says, okay, so yeah, householders die. And we need to have a way of making sure that their legacy doesn't just go randomly to whoever. It has a right place to go.
Okay,
So well defined, if this one is not, then go to the next one, go to the next one, it's so specific.
okay,
They don't leave it open, okay, whatever it's gonna be, it's gonna be.
okay, so now all of a sudden it's become specific. Okay, who else? Alan?
No, my question is, we know Moses didn't really wanna make a decision on his own, so we brought God to help him make a decision. Now, do we know whether or not Moses, obviously he's gonna carry out God's wishes, but we don't know what he really thought on his own.
What Moses thought on his own?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we don't, but we know enough that he took it to God.
right,
That Moses in the moment recognized this is something bigger than just than this moment, this case, this specific plea from this family, right? Yeah, Marcia.
Well, also, the last time Moses took it upon himself to make a decision to take action. Not a good result, he's not going to the promised land,
Oh, interesting, so you're bringing up the rock. Oh, interesting, very
it
interesting.
was just less than.
Oh, fascinating, right? So not too long ago, I will, not too long ago, and just recently, we read that remember Moses loses his brother and his sister, and God says, the people are thirsty, they want water, they need to quench their thirst, and God says, speak to the rock, and the rock will issue water, and Moses hits the rock, not once, but twice, right? Frustrated, and as a result, he learns that he himself won't go into the land. Very interesting, I like that you brought that piece of Torah into it, okay? Nice, okay. One of the things I find really amazing about this moment in Torah, Devana.
Yeah, it seemed like once this creed was established, passed on from one to the next, to the next, it should eventually stay within the boundary of the Israelites. That's what I'm reading from this, it should not go outside.
Right, it keeps it within the tribe, that's also important here, because we're gonna learn a little bit about the tribe. But yeah, Susan,
I was just thinking, the word, you should give them. And I'm thinking it helps make this decision common sense and why you should, it doesn't say you will. And then they're like, we don't have a choice. But this is more gentle.
okay. Beautiful, nice, Annie.
I think it also provides a path or, so that the other people don't riot. It's like, I can see them like, oh, why do they get it? Why do they get it? So it's very specific. This is how it's done. Stop arguing. No golden calf here.
No golden calf, right, let's not bring that golden calf thing back, okay? One of the, you guys are like, you are really becoming Torah scholars here, okay? Studiers, I love that, students of Torah, because it's true, you're looking at each line, it's so important, that's the beauty of, and the richness, look, this is just 5 lines of Torah. Look how much comes out of 5 lines, right? The beauty here is each of these elements. The first is, God says, it's just. Yep, this is something we gotta put the brakes on. What we first thought was really, was logical thinking, each tribe gets their land, like this is a solid way to do this and apportion the land. Now all of a sudden, something has come up that challenges that initial ruling or that initial assumption of this is the way to do it. And the daughter saying, this isn't gonna work. In that moment, Moses says, there's something right. I gotta bring this to God, and God says it's just. That's the first thing that I think is really remarkable. The second thing is he says, you're right, God says, now, they should inherit their father's share. But then here's the next part. You can imagine if you read between the lines is to say, how are we gonna ensure that this is not just a one-off? How are we going to ensure that when the women go in and Zelophehad has a portion and everybody else in the tribe knows that Zelophehad doesn't have any heirs, we've got to justify the fact that they received this land. That's one piece of it. The other piece is we have to realize that this is something that can happen. And the original ruling that we intended to think that was smart and logical has provided an opportunity for it to base off the precedent to then create a new ruling, which is going to take us into the future. Right? And then I want to be really clear. The clarity and the specificity that is listed here is so important to recognize if we also think about it from a halachic, from a Jewish law perspective, to understand that the laws of inheritance in this moment in the Torah shift. They change.
Can I ask you something? Does it always go to just the oldest son, or is it divided up?
So traditionally, the heir, it would be the oldest son, right? Now, what's one of the things that we've learned in the Torah?
Doesn't always work out.
It doesn't always work out so well, right? If we think about all the siblings, right?
So the mean,
But-
they have nothing.
Well, it's not that they don't have nothing, this is about the tribe, okay? So that there is someone who inherits, there's an inheritor, right? And then there are other things in terms of what they receive and how they will grow their portion, but they're living within the tribal land, it's just there is someone who is the inheritor, which is the eldest, okay? We could spend an entire year studying the Jewish law on inheritance. But we're not right now.
Sure.
We could, but right now, we're just focusing on the moment in which it shifts, okay? So yes, and which each of these pieces, there's an entire discussion in Jewish law that goes into each line of this. Okay, so then you have the brother, you've got the uncle, you've got the other uncle, the mother's side, the woman's side, we don't talk about a wife here. Nobody mentioned that there is no mother mentioned. We don't know.
Except at the end, when he says, if there is no other members of all this family, then it should be the nearest relative in his own clan, whoever that is, I suppose.
Right, but exactly right, but there is no specific mention here of their mother. So we don't know if she too died in the wilderness, we don't know anything about her. We just right now know that this is from where they come, because that's what establishes the lineage and that's what establishes the clan, the tribe. Okay?
But it didn't matter, did it? Because the wife, if there was a wife, she would just go with the older brother or the younger.
Right, exactly.
She had no rights or anything.
Right, right now we're focused on who inherits from
Right,
it,
so-
that's right, yeah,
I'm
Tara.
just gonna say one thing, because I do this all day long with my work, government policy, so I just wrote down, a real case created policy, and policy is a form of legacy.
Okay, say it slower and louder.
Yeah.
A single case created policy, and policy in itself is a form of legacy.
Hmm.
Because sometimes a case can change things, kind of like my work field, IT and government policy, like nuclear power plants, all of a sudden with this tech, new things can come along, new things more can change, everything adapts. And sometimes cases come up like this, and so now you have a new policy in response to that, and so policy becomes legacy.
Beautiful, and right, and also all of Jewish laws is responding to precedent. What is the precedent? And then how does it evolve and change in order to fit the context of today? There is a precedent here. The precedent was that it went to the male, to the children, to the son. Okay, now we have an issue. There's no son. So now we have to understand that precedent, and now we need to say, well, what did that precedent say? Oh, well, because it stayed with the son, because it stayed within the clan, within the tribe. Okay, so we don't have a son, but we have 5 daughters. Okay, so now the next question is, because it's 5 daughters, what's the next question?
Which daughter?
No, what's the question? Think about it in terms of the tribe.
My thinking is that once they're married, does that land then go to their husband as lost among the daughters?
That's why he has to marry the.
Judith Chinton is Rashi. Yes, Judith, exactly right, because that's what the stage is at. I just remember that. But that's exactly right, because that's what the sages are gonna ask.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna ask. That's what the men who are standing there are gonna ask. 100%. Hey, this is all great. We all feel good about this. Stays within the daughters of Zelophehad are gonna receive the portion of the land that was meant for their father. They're gonna receive that share. Fabulous. Wonderful.
If that's the case, then the wife in the previous few verses should have received something which she was mentioned. The mother was mentioned. If the husband of the daughters should actually, be mentioned as the recipient of some legacy, then of course the mother, to me, would have mentioned earlier, but no mention of the mother to the daughters.
Okay, I wanna say, hold on 1 second, I just wanna state. In the realm of where Judith just mentioned, because the first thing that they're gonna ask is, well, what happens when they get married?
Has to bring someone to the tribe, I don't know.
That's right, that's the ruling. The ruling then that God says right after this is, they will receive this portion. And they have to marry within their tribe.
Okay.
Okay, what?
I said they become very desirable.
Well, either that and, well, okay, so but now, right, so they have some, right, they've got, you know, this portion, true. But because then, and that question comes up, well, then what happens if they marry outside of their tribe? Where does the land go, right? Then the land would be transferred. So God makes a ruling. They will receive this, they will have this portion. And they have to stay married within their tribe.
I have another question. Is it all 5 split it, or is the oldest daughter receive it?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer.
Well, the daughter said if I for.
They receive it because the way that the text is written. The way that it's written, it says you transfer the property to his daughter.
His daughter.
His daughter.
Or his daughter, single.
The text says daughter. Okay, so here, this is an interesting point. When we first meet the daughters, it is written as, these are the daughters of Zelophehad, 1 unit. A little later on in the same verse, we then meet the 5 daughters. So because there are 5, the assumption is there is an eldest. Right, there is an oldest one. Okay, but it doesn't get that specific here. Interestingly enough. Okay, but what is fascinating is more than anything, that they have to marry within their tribe means that the tribe itself retains the portion of land. So it's not like we're talking about one house in this space, it's a portion of the land. The daughters will live in this portion of the land, that is the land, the portion of Zelophehad within the tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh, though, it's a tribe, it's the piece of land that's going to be apportioned within the larger portion of the tribe of Manasseh. Right, so the land is different portions, right? You've seen the map of Israel when they portion out all the lands. Within that big section that Manasseh is gonna get are these individual placements of where the different clans are within the tribe, and part of that is gonna be Zalafahad, that's where the daughters are gonna live, we're not gonna have that space. Okay? Alright, so let's understand a little bit more about the daughters themselves, okay? Cause I think that's really interesting. Rashi focuses on this portion. What makes them so great? Why are these the 5 daughters that shift and change forever the laws of inheritance for the people of Israel? And it says that they, the women, that their eyes saw what Moses' eye did not see. That they had a finer perception of what was just in the law of inheritance than Moses had. They have made a fair claim, their claim is just. Happy is the person whose words the Holy One, blessed be God, agrees. Okay? So for Rashi is focused on they come forward and what they spoke was just, was right. That they understood in a much larger context what the right path, what the right way forward was for the people of Israel, and had a finer perception than Moses. And that the fact that God agreed with them, that for Rashi elevates them. Okay? The daughters of Zelophehad came forward. This was greatness for them and greatness for their father's legacy. Greatness also for Machir as well as for Joseph, that such women came forth from them. They were wise and righteous women, but what was their wisdom? That's what the sages asked. What was their wisdom? They spoke at the appropriate moment. For Moses was engaged upon the subject of inheritance. I love this line. I want us to take a moment to really think about what is the Midbar Rabbah actually challenging us. What was their wisdom? Wasn't that it was about the laws of inheritance? It wasn't about what they were arguing. What was their wisdom?
They knew when to bring it up.
They knew when to bring it up. They spoke at the appropriate time, at the right moment. They recognized the moment and they came forward. I want all of us, when we talk about how does Torah help inspire us and guide us in our lives, these are the words that bring power into our lives. What makes us wise? To speak at the moment. The recognition and the awareness of the moment, and that we have the power to come forward and to speak at the appropriate moment. To not just recognize it and have awareness of it and to let it go by, but to actually recognize, have awareness, and to come forward. That is Am Yisrael, people of Israel, that is our obligation and our responsibility. It wasn't that their claim was right or wrong, it was that it was just. And when we think about what our tradition argues, that we should understand, tzedek tzedek tirdov, that justice shall you pursue, is also linked to this moment where they recognize that the wisdom was that they knew that this was the moment and they didn't let it go by. They didn't say, all right, you know what, this isn't good. This is a bummer. Women don't have a spot for us. Here we are living in this patriarchy. Nobody cares about us. We'll deal with it when we get there. So we'll go into the land. We'll marry someone and we'll have a place to live. We'll figure it out. What they said though, in the moment was, this is our moment. We are aware enough, we are astute enough, we know what's just, we know this isn't it. But I'm not gonna allow the system that currently is happening right now, I'm not gonna allow it to dampen my voice. That I have a voice. And that the 5 of us, as sisters, we have a voice. And we're gonna go together. They're gonna recognize that the 5 of us take this seriously. We're gonna march right up to Moses. Can you imagine them the night before? Imagine sitting in the desert, underneath a star-filled sky, pretty hot. They don't have a glass of water, right? They don't have wine. I mean, maybe they did, I don't know. They're thinking to themselves, you see what just happened? They counted up 601,730 men.
Do you think only one noticeable, or do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think, Annie?
I think several of them spoke.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I love
I
that.
think each one of them spoke because it showed Moses and everybody else that each one of them counted.
And that's why they mentioned the each by name. Okay, beautiful. It's a beautiful midrash. Midrash by Ravani. Okay. The Rama.
And Rashi was indicted to summarize, he's actually saying that woman has the same powers as man. Speak.
Oh. Well, let's just go to Sifrei Bamidbar and let's see what they say about that. And there drew near the daughters of Zelophehad, when the daughters of Zelophehad heard that the land was to be apportioned to the tribes and not to females, they gathered together to take counsel, saying, not as the mercies of flesh and blood are the mercies of the Lord. The mercies of flesh and blood are greater for males than for females. Not so the mercies of God who spoke and brought the world into being. God's mercies are for males and females equally. This was not written yesterday, by the way. Secret, okay, this is, okay. Who spoke and brought the world into being. God's mercies are for males and females equally. God's mercies are for all. As it is written, the Lord is good to all. This is an amazing text and commentary on the verse in the Torah what we're talking about, and they came forward. That this plane is not just enough for human. God doesn't see both. God sees equally. And so what the text is suggesting also is that, yeah, they're just, you're right, that we got to figure this out. Right? But that this was brought to God. And God says, oh, right. I gotta adjust this. Yeah, Marshall.
So because it says his mercies are for males and females equally, is mercies just one kind of a subject? Because if that was believed, why do we have the pizzas in certain shows? That's not, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just listening.
You know, why are men and women separated when they go to show? And I'm not going to show.
Okay, it's but it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that men and women should be separated in terms of mechitza. That's sort of like an ordained from God. Right, over time we created those customs and those traditions, right? And look, people have different feelings about those things. That's not my place to judge one way or another. Those are, for some people, that's what's comfortable, to daven and to pray separately.
Yeah.
Right? Beseda. For others, it's comfortable to pray all together. Beseda. Great. Beautiful. You can choose. Okay? For here, what's beautiful about this is that the text itself, the commentary on the text is saying that God doesn't see it separately. Which makes it even more beautiful that the ruling that is then created is truly in response and reaction to what we initially set forth in our understanding of how to separate the land. Oops. We realize that we made that there's other extenuating circumstances, and it's not just an exception. That we realize that this could happen, that this is a part of life, and so we have to accommodate for that. And therefore, a new rule. Okay. So I want to go to a modern text. Okay. And then we're gonna go to what happened this week, and we're gonna end with that. You guys are so fun to learn with. Okay. Let's go to this. Okay, at the very, page 4 on your text, it's a final text, okay? There's a modern commentary. The achievement of Zelophehad's daughters was a landmark in women's rights regarding the inheritance of land from those days up to now. Current. In addition, however, the story of these 5 women offers a compelling lesson for all. Those who believe that their destiny is fixed, or that divine justice has abandoned them. It encourages us to think differently and provides a message of hope for all those faced with obstacles. Perhaps the most important legacy of Zelophehad's daughters is their call to us to take hold of life with our own hands, to move from the place that the others have given us, or that we have decided to keep because we feel immobile, and to walk, to go forward, even to the most holy center, to where nobody seems to be able to go. After all, nothing is more sacred than life itself, and the fight for what we believe is worthy. Thus, the Parsha inspires us to discover that we too have the ability to know what is right for ourselves and what our rights ought to be. When we believe in our capacity to shape our history to the point of being able to change even a law that came from the revelation at Sinai, then we pay a tribute to Zelophehad's daughters. So let's see what these 6 women did this week. So this has been a case in the making for a long time, but I want to take us to what happened this week. So,
Oh,
Wow.
that's great.
now, let's just read the headline. The chief rabbinate of Israel must open rabbinical tests to women. The High Court, the Supreme Court of Israel, ruled this week. Okay? The ruling, you always have to read the fine print. The ruling does not imply that women are entitled to be ordained as rabbis, but it offers unprecedented recognition of their Torah scholarship. Okay? So this means that in Israel, according to the verdict that came out this week, that's been a case in the works since 2018, because these 6 women brought it to them, that the rabbinate must open its tests to women. Okay? It doesn't mean that they can have smicha, but why it's important is because the status of this testing is also linked. It is basically essential to say, if you take these certain tests, you receive, it's equivalent to like a PhD, which means you can, like in higher academia, which then means you can receive a salary. That women can take these tests, sit for these tests, take the tests, and be granted a level, like let's say the level of like a PhD, an advanced degree, which then allows them to teach at this level of Torah, okay, within the communities, and to be paid like the men. So this petition was presented to the court in 2019, okay? And this has been a huge deal because it's the first time that there's official state recognition in Israel of women's Torah scholarship. And it does 2 things. I wanted us to have the article. First of all, there's the symbolic issue that the state of Israel recognizes that the rabbinate is subject to the laws and not able to discriminate against women. In addition, from the women's Torah leadership and learning perspective, it states that there's a clear path towards measuring what scholarship is, because until now, there's been a tendency to be very dismissive of women's Torah scholarship. Okay? So just so you understand, they administer these tests in areas of Jewish law, kashrut, family purity, Shabbos, marriage laws, okay? And candidates who wish to be eligible to be recognized as rabbis have to pass a certain number of these tests, okay? So I thought this was so fascinating. 6 tests are enough for the level of neighborhood rabbi, while the title of city rabbi requires 11 tests. The rabbinate also grants other types of certificates to those who pass the test with important economic and social implications. That's why this is important, because it allows for them to achieve the women to achieve a certain level of status within the communities that grants them the ability to have the title of teacher within these certain elements of the society, which then they draw a salary. Okay? So let's just see, right? So it's in terms of salary benefits and it's a prerequisite for public jobs. Remember, public jobs within the rabbinate, you receive money from the state, okay? All right, so this is Rabbi Seth Barber. He is the head of the NGO that helped to bring this case into being and fruition. And so what's fascinating is that just this week, okay, that this shifts and changes as we're about to read the Parsha of the daughters of Zelophehad. So 5 daughters of Zelophehad, 6 women in Israel who brought this case in the 2018, 2019, in order to say, we are Torah scholars. We can sit for these tests. We are teachers of Torah. We can have the same, we should be sitting for these exams. And the runaround that they received, one can only imagine, about, oh yeah, well, we'll see, we'll give them different tests, and we never happened. Finally makes its way to the Supreme Court, and literally this week, the verdict came out that they should sit for these tests. This is the power of Torah in our lives. Why is it important that they came forward? They recognized the moment. The daughters of Zelophehad, the 6 women that we read about in Israel this week, they recognized the moment. They knew the appropriateness of the case. They understand from a deep place that the ruling was not just, and so they knew that they had to speak. And they spoke at the appropriate time. They knew it, they seized the moment, and they made a difference that not just impacted their own lives, but for the generations to come. Just like the 6 women this week in Israel, who made a difference and hopefully will have a lasting impact for the generations to come for women in Israel. The Torah lives in our eyes. The Torah lives in our being. And what's even more powerful for us to think about is to be aware, eyes open, hearts open, and consciously aware of the moments around us, and for when we are called upon to come forward and to speak and to make a difference, not just for our own interests, but for the interests of the generations to come. Shabbat shalom. Yay! I'll see you next Friday.